You live behind your big fences so that you don't have to get to know us. You moved into our neighborhood. You can't ignore me anymore.
Hi, my name is Alessandra Mañon, and I play Jasmine in Rich Kids. I think that Jasmine is really interesting because she is initially seen or portrayed as the sexy Latina archetype, and I think it's very easy to fall into the idea of who that is rather than the actual person. One of the things that's really important to us in the film, there's a specific scene that she has with Carlos, in which Ulysses plays Carlos as the thug archetype, the bad boy, he's always getting into trouble, all these things, and they get to a point where they're going to get physical, they're going to have sex, but Jasmine doesn't want to, because as much as she plays the idea of being sexy and being okay with her sexuality, she's still a really young girl that doesn't really know what that means or who she is sexually or if she's even comfortable with it sexually. It's simply been the way that people have shown her that she can have power in society and where she stands in society. That is an easy way for her to always maintain a sense of power, especially over men, who a lot of times hold a lot of the power in a lot of the Latino and Hispanic communities. So in this particular scene, Carlos and Jasmine, they've been kind of flirting with each other, messing with each other all night. Truth or dare happens, all of the things, and they get to the point where they're probably going to have sex, or where they think that they might have sex. It's very interesting because it starts off that way, where both parties are pretty into it, but as the scene progresses, Jasmine becomes really uncomfortable with it. One of the things that really endeared me to Jasmine, one of the things I really love about her, is that although she plays the sexual Latina archetype role, whatever, that's not who she is. And when put in a sexual situation like that, she doesn't actually know how to handle herself or what she wants or what she doesn't want, but all she knows is that she's uncomfortable, and she starts to shut down. And Carlos, regardless of the thuggish criminal bad boy kind of thing that he goes for throughout the whole thing, he's able to recognize that she's uncomfortable and respects her enough to simply stop what they're doing. And it's okay. They stop, they smoke, and then they talk about life a little bit more and actually have a bit more of a connection. It was really interesting because when we initially read the script, the scene was to go differently, that Carlos just couldn't get it out because he was so drunk, and then they didn't have sex because of that. But while Ulysses and I were working on our characters, we kind of realized that wasn't really how we saw them, I see Jasmine as she's real afraid of a lot of things, and she plays the sexual card because it's one of the only things that gives her a sense of power and safety in her community. As a sexy creature, she has a lot of pull over the men in the community, and a lot of the men are usually who hold the power in a Hispanic or Latino community, since it's still very patriarchal. But when put in these situations, she's not actually comfortable with herself sexually. She's not comfortable with her sexuality. She doesn't know how to handle that. She's never really been put in a situation where that's a safe, okay thing to explore. So when we first read the script, it didn't quite make sense that she would, at least for me, that she would still want to have sex. And then when I started working on it with Ulysses, it didn't quite make sense to him either. So when this came time to film it, we were able to sit down with Laura, our director, and work out something different that did feel right for us, you know? And I feel like it's a really important scene because it makes a very strong commentary about young kids and consent and what happens or what should happen, ideally. It's not the kind of thing that you see in movies a lot, you know? It's a lot less exciting or a lot less sexy or a lot less marketable or blockbustery or whatever you want to call it to see in mainstream media, a scene where people, they're gonna have sex and then they don't because someone's not comfortable with it, you know? But it's also the reality. This happens so much more, especially with younger kids that don't quite know who they are sexually yet, that all of a sudden they shut down and they don't feel comfortable with it, and then you can get into trouble if you're not able to recognize that in your partner. But it was really important for us to show that even though Carlos plays the thug, the bad boy, the whatever, criminal, he sees she's not okay with it, and he stops. That's the end of the sentence. There's no pushing. He doesn't try and coerce her. He doesn't ask again later. Like, he simply stops. He's able to see that, and he respects her enough to do that, which I believe is probably one of the first times that's happened for Jasmine. Because guys don't typically do that, unfortunately. That's kind of a conversation where it's, I don't know if recognizing the nonverbal cues of people being uncomfortable is a thing that we need to get better about talking about and showing or discussing. But it's just not the norm, and it kind of needs to be. And I think it's important that someone like Carlos can serve as a role model for consent. This is simply a thing that you do. You know, if your partner is uncomfortable, for whatever reason, you stop. You don't have to ask them why, you don't have to have a conversation about it, you just stop and you give them space. I don't think that a lot of people in general are able to see those cues. We even had people that have seen the film multiple times say afterwards about the scene that, like, oh, Carlos just couldn't get it up. You know, they didn't recognize that Jasmine was in panic mode, that she was freaking out. I don't think that people are taught to see those cues. I don't think that they understand what those means. I think that it's still so normalized, especially in the media still, that, like, the first no is just the first no. You'll get a yes after the second or fourth, maybe sixth no, you know? So if you just keep pushing at it, and then, like, it's a game, you know, it's a cat and mouse game, and that's so much more talked about and idealized and models a lot of the male behaviors. I've had so many conversations with intelligent, empathetic men that are my friends that they simply don't know what those cues are. They simply don't realize, which is a huge problem. Because how can we make sure that everyone is safe and protected and on the same page if we're not able to see or understand what everyone's saying non-verbally, which is like 90% of communication anyway. So I think one of the things that we need to start doing absolutely is teaching young guys and young girls what that looks like. In the film, the two sex scenes are juxtaposed and they happen almost simultaneously. You just cut from one to the other. And in Carlos and Jasmine's, you can see that it's very hesitant and it's very tense, and Jasmine isn't on board. She's terrified. She's get out of her mind, you know? But with Vanessa and Matt, they're very open, they're very free, they're very excited. Everyone's on board, everyone knows what's going on. They're very tender, they're very gentle. They've gotten to that point in their friendship, in their relationship, that they want to explore that side of their relationship. They also start off very slow. I think that Matt has a little bit more hesitancy to see that Vanessa's actually, like, on board and, like, into it. but like she for sure gives him a couple thumbs up. You know, the other people are just like, we're good to go. Let's do all the things. Very exciting, you know, as opposed to Jasmine, where she shuts down. She's not looking at Carlos. She's not really touching him. She kind of goes into her own little world and tries to pretend that she's not there because she's afraid and doesn't know how to handle it. Carlos is able to recognize that and not push that. You know, I think that eye contact is a huge thing, and not just eye contact, but like, what kind of eye contact? There's a difference between like, hey, super into this, awesome, very excited, and also like, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm a little uncomfortable. This isn't really the thing. And simply looking at your partner and making sure that we're all on the same page. And if you can't tell, that's fine. You can ask them. You can still be really sexy about it and ask them and make sure that they're okay. Is this good? Do you want this? Does this feel nice?
You looking for loot?
Just checking stuff out.
This house is dope. I'm gonna give me a place like this at some point.
You need a real job for that.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna be working 80 hours busting my ass like my mom for a shit paycheck. Stupid. There's other ways.
So, a couple years ago, my mom, my brothers and sisters and I, we lived out of a motel for a while because my mom couldn't find a job. I don't know. Like, a real job and a shit paycheck isn't stupid to me.
Damn. I didn't know that.
No one knows, not even Vanessa. I'm proud of my mom, though. She fought like hell to get on her feet, and she did. You know?
To our mothers.
Our mothers.
One of my favorite parts about the movie is that after the sex scene with Carlos and Jasmine, he doesn't like question her. He's simply like, no is no, and that's fine. We're just gonna hang out now and it'll be fine. And then the scene directly after that, it's them having a conversation that, in my opinion, is so much more intimate than anything that they would have done physically. She opens up to him and talks about her family life and how hard it's been with her mom and her siblings, the things that she values, as opposed to the illusions that he has or the preconceived notions that he has about success. And they're able to talk to each other as equals, without the mask of the bad boy, without the mask of the sexy one, without the mask of the whatever. They're able to let their guards down and be honest with each other and just talk and get to know each other and develop a sense of trust with each other. One of my favorite things in that bit is that after she opens up to him in a way that she hadn't before with anyone else, he kisses her, which is such a tender moment and such a tender thing, and such a confirmation for her that, like, even though I didn't sleep with you and even though I didn't give you what I thought that you wanted, you still care about me. I'm still worthy outside of what I can offer someone sexually. I still deserve love and affection and intimacy and tenderness outside of whoever it is that I pretend to be sexually, which is so much more important to them than if they would have just had sex, you know? Because then they wouldn't have talked. She would have been freaking out and he would have probably like gone to smoke and gone out and done something else, and that would be it. They wouldn't have had this beautiful shift in their relationship. They wouldn't have had that moment where they got to be fully themselves and honest and open with each other, which is one of my favorite scenes ever to film, really. That was really fun. Lady directors, minority directors, anyone telling a story that means something to them. I think that when people tell stories that mean something, or they're passionate about them, or something happens. I think that we saw that in Rich Kids. Everyone read the story and we were there for the story. We had such a tiny budget, you know, and like we scrambled and we didn't have a lot of time and that wasn't the thing, but the story was so important. So when people, filmmakers, are writing about things that matter to them, that's where the magic happens. I'm so much more interested right now in working with the indie community, especially the Latino indie community, because I'm Mexican, than Hollywood, because I think that something happens when you have a huge studio budget, that the concern becomes, are we going to get enough money back for this? Are we going to make the $8 million back? Well, if you take your top off in the scene, then we will. You know, people will come see it. You know, or like have one more giant explosion, you know, or make the shark just really huge shark. You know, all these tricks and these spectacles and everything that'll get people in the seats and they'll keep them entertained for 2 or 3 hours, but you're not telling a story, you're not getting a message across, you're not getting something more, you know, which I think is one of the beauties of filmmaking and art in general, is that you want to tell a story that matters, that's going to open people's eyes, that will make them more empathetic to someone else's point of view, that will, to get them thinking about the way that they're living and the way that they're interacting and the way that people are associating with each other. So I'm very excited about working with people like Gina Rodriguez, Benicio del Toro, Guillermo del Toro, sorry. That would be amazing. Diego Luna, oh my god. That would be great. So I'm very excited right now to tell the underdog stories, almost, the stories that aren't being told, the stories that aren't getting the huge budgets. I would love to tell more stories from the Latin perspective. That means a lot to me. I would love to work with more Latin artists. Female filmmakers, absolutely. I think that there's an interesting shift happening where women are beginning to feel like they can tell their stories, and we're beginning to see that women's stories are just as important and just as viewed and just as necessary as whatever men's stories are being told. The female perspective is huge right now, and I want more of that. Yeah, I want to make art that matters, that does something, that inspires a conversation, whatever the conversation is. You could come up to me and tell me you hated it, that you thought that Jasmine was skanky and whatever. Okay, great. You had an opinion about it. Let's talk about that. That's all I care about. Let's go. Yeah, that's what I'm excited about.